Your mortgage isn't designed to be paid off. Your credit card rewards aren't a bonus. Your salary raises just enough to keep you chained. You've been systematically stripped of ownership over the last 50 years, and you never saw it coming because the machine doesn't announce itself. It operates in silence. It moves in stages. And right now, in 2026, you're standing in stage 4 of a 6-stage dispossession pattern that has collapsed every major economy in the last century. This isn't theory. This is mechanical. This is the expropriation machine. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which stage you're trapped in and what comes next. The silent phase is the period where you lose purchasing power faster than your income rises, but the system convinces you that you're progressing. You feel it every month. Your paycheck arrives. Your rent takes half. Your car payment takes another chunk. Groceries cost more, but the bill looks the same because you're buying less. You're working harder than your parents did, but you own less. You're earning more nominal dollars, but commanding less real wealth. And the gap isn't random. It's engineered. Because the modern dispossession machine doesn't steal your property outright. It inflates the price of ownership until you're forced to rent everything. Your home, your car, your software, your entertainment, even your identity through subscription-based access to the economy. This pattern has a history. Not ancient Rome, not medieval feudalism. We're talking about the last 100 years. Because the expropriation machine was refined in 3 distinct economic collapses that share the exact same 6-stage structure. First collapse, Weimar Germany between 1919 and 1923. The middle class held savings in marks. The government printed currency to pay war debts. Prices doubled every 3 days at the peak. People who worked their entire lives watched their savings evaporate in 18 months. The psychological lever was trust in paper currency. The trap was the delay between when inflation started and when ordinary people understood what was happening. By the time they moved their wealth into real assets, the window had closed. Who benefited? Industrial conglomerates and landowners who held tangible property. Who lost? Every salaried worker and small saver in the country. Second collapse, the Latin American debt crises of the 1980s. Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. The pattern was identical across borders. Governments borrowed in foreign currency. Interest rates spiked. National currencies collapsed. Inflation ran into triple digits. The middle class held their savings in local banks. The banks were denominated in local currency. The currency lost 70, 80, 90% of its value within 2 years. The psychological lever was national pride and the belief that their government would protect them. The trap was the capital controls that prevented people from moving money out until it was worthless. Who benefited? International creditors and those with dollar-denominated assets. Who lost? Every family that trusted their domestic banking system. Third collapse, the Japanese asset bubble deflation from 1991 to 2003. This one moved slower, but the result was the same. Real estate prices tripled in 5 years. Salaries didn't keep pace. Workers took on 30-year mortgages at the peak. The bubble popped. Property values dropped 60%. But the debt remained at full value. Families spent decades paying off loans for houses worth half what they borrowed. The psychological lever was social pressure and the belief that real estate always appreciates. The trap was the lag between taking on debt and recognizing that asset values were inflated. Who benefited? The banks that issued the mortgages and never took a loss. Who lost? An entire generation locked into underwater debt. 3 different countries, 3 different decades, the exact same 6-stage sequence, and every single time the dispossession machine moved faster than public awareness. That's the key. The machine doesn't need secrecy. It needs speed. It needs to operate faster than your ability to recognize the pattern and adapt. And right now, in 2026, it's moving faster than it ever has before. This brings us to stage 1, the expansion phase. This is where credit becomes abundant and asset prices begin to rise. It feels like prosperity. Unemployment is low, wages tick up slightly, housing prices climb, but not alarmingly. The stock market sets new records. Banks offer loans with ease. The narrative is growth. The reality is the foundation of the trap being set. Because in stage 1, debt feels like opportunity. Borrowing feels like leverage. Buying an asset on credit feels like smart wealth building. And the system encourages this exact behavior because stage 1 is where the hooks are placed. Mortgages extend to 30 years. Car loans stretch to 7. Credit cards offer 0% introductory rates. The mechanism here is simple. Normalize debt as the primary tool for accessing the middle class. Make it impossible to buy a home without a mortgage. Make it standard to finance a car. Make it expected that you'll carry a credit card balance. The trap isn't the debt itself. The trap is that the debt is denominated in currency, whose value the system controls. And in stage 1, nobody's watching the currency. Then comes stage 2, asset price acceleration. This is where the objects you need to survive start rising faster than your income. Housing jumps 10, 15, 20% per year. But your salary increases 2 or 3%. The math stops working, but the narrative doesn't change. You're told this is normal market behavior. You're told to buy now or be priced out forever. The psychological lever in stage 2 is FOMO, fear of missing out. Fear that if you don't buy the house today, you'll never afford one. Fear that if you don't get into the market now, you'll be a renter forever. So you take on more debt, you stretch your budget, you convince yourself that rising asset prices mean you're building wealth. But here's the mechanism at work. Your asset is appreciating in nominal terms, but your debt is fixed in those same nominal terms. That sounds good until you realize that the currency itself is being quietly debased. The price of your house is rising because the value of the dollar is falling. But your income is sticky. It adjusts slowly. So you're getting richer on paper and poorer in purchasing power at the same time. And you don't notice because stage 2 feels like winning. Stage 3 is where the system turns, the peak saturation point. This is where the majority of the population is now carrying maximum debt loads. Mortgages at the top of their budget, car payments pushing $500, $600, $700 a month, credit card balances that never quite get paid off, student loans that stretch into decades. And here's the key. In stage 3, your debt service becomes the floor of your spending. You can't reduce your mortgage payment. You can't reduce your car note. Those are locked in. So when prices for food, energy, insurance start climbing, you have no flexibility. You're trapped in a fixed cost structure while variable costs explode around you. This is the silent phase in action. You feel poorer, but you can't identify why. You're making more money than you ever have, but you're saving less. You're working more hours, but building less wealth. The mechanism here is the ratchet effect. Once you've locked in high fixed costs through debt, you can't adjust downward without catastrophic consequences. Selling your house in a down market means realizing a loss. Defaulting on your car means destroying your credit and losing transportation. So you hold on, you keep paying, you keep working, and the machine extracts every available dollar. Stage 4 is where we are right now in 2026, the inflation acceleration phase. This is where the currency debasement that's been happening quietly in the background becomes impossible to ignore. Grocery prices have doubled in 5 years. Rent has increased 40, 50, 60% in major cities. Car insurance has spiked. Health insurance has spiked. Childcare costs have exploded. And wages have increased maybe 15, 20% for the average worker. The gap is undeniable now. You're losing purchasing power every single month. Your savings are being eroded by inflation running at 8, 10, 12%, depending on what you're measuring. And here's the cruelest part of stage 4. The assets you bought in stage 2, the house you stretched to afford, the stock portfolio you built, those are denominated in the same debasing currency. So yes, your house is worth more in dollar terms. But those dollars buy less. You're trapped in an asset that's appreciating in a currency that's collapsing. You can't convert that equity into purchasing power without selling and triggering massive tax consequences and transaction costs. So you're house rich and cash poor while your grocery bill climbs every week. This is not a conspiracy. This is a business model. The mechanism is inflation as a transfer system. When currency loses value, debt becomes cheaper to service in real terms, but only if your income keeps pace with inflation. For corporations, for governments, for asset holders with pricing power, inflation is a benefit. They can raise prices faster than costs. For wage earners, for savers, for anyone on a fixed income, inflation is confiscation. You're being systematically robbed of purchasing power, and there's no crime scene because it's legal. Stage 5 is the forced liquidation phase. This is where the trap springs. At some point, the gap between your fixed costs and your variable cost becomes unsustainable. You can't afford both the mortgage and the grocery bill. You can't afford both the car payment and the medical expense. Something has to give, and what gives is the asset. You sell the house, you sell the car, you liquidate the retirement account. And because you're selling in a market where everyone else is doing the same thing at the same time, you're selling at a loss. The exact asset you bought as protection against inflation becomes the thing you have to dump at the worst possible moment. The buyers in stage 5 are the institutional players, the private equity firms, the sovereign wealth funds, the family offices. They've been waiting for this exact moment. They held cash or cash equivalents through the inflation. They let you take the losses, and now they're buying your house, your neighborhood, your entire asset class at a 30, 40, 50% discount. This happened in 2008 with housing. It's happening right now with single-family homes being purchased by institutional investors. Invitation homes, American Homes for Rent, Blackstone. They're not buying homes to flip, they're buying homes to rent. Because stage 5 is where ownership transfers from individuals to institutions. You become a renter in the property you used to own. And the rent? The rent is higher than your mortgage was, because now you're paying not just for shelter, but for the profit margin of a corporation that bought your distressed asset. Stage 6 is the consolidation and control phase. This is the end game. The ownership of real assets is concentrated in the hands of a small number of institutional players. The middle class has been effectively proletarianized. You own nothing. You rent everything. Your labor is the only thing you control, and even that is precarious because employment is flexible and disposable. The system has successfully transferred wealth from the many to the few using nothing but inflation, debt, and time. And here's what makes stage 6 permanent. Once institutions own the asset base, they control the pricing. They can set rents at whatever the market will bear. They can lobby for zoning laws that prevent new construction. They can create artificial scarcity. The individual has no leverage. You can't negotiate with Blackstone the way you could negotiate with a local landlord. You can't build equity. You can't pass anything down to your children. You're locked into a subscription model for survival. And the machine doesn't need to push anymore. It just needs to maintain. So where are you right now? If you're carrying a mortgage, you're in stage 3 or 4. If you bought a house in the last 5 years, you're watching your purchasing power erode while your nominal asset value rises. If you're renting because you couldn't afford to buy, you're already in stage 5 whether you realize it or not. The institutional buyers have already priced you out. If you're young and just entering the workforce, you're being born into stage 6. Home ownership isn't even on your radar because the entry price is 10 times your annual income. You're planning to rent forever and you're being told this is normal. This is lifestyle flexibility. This is the future. But it's not the future. It's the completion of a dispossession cycle that's been running since the 1970s. Let's look at the math plainly. In 1970, the median home price in the United States was roughly $23,000. The median household income was $9,000. That's a price-to-income ratio of about 2.5 to 1. You could buy a house with 2.5 years of gross income. By 2020, the median home price was $330,000. Median household income was $68,000. That's a ratio of nearly 5 to 1. It takes 5 years of gross income to buy the same house. But here's the trick. Those 50 years were also the era of declining interest rates. Mortgage rates went from 8% in the 1970s to 3% in 2020. Lower rates meant higher prices because buyers could afford bigger loans. The price of the house inflated, but the monthly payment stayed relatively affordable. Now we're in 2026. Interest rates have spiked back to 7%. Home prices haven't corrected fully. The price-to-income ratio is still above 5. But now the monthly payment has exploded because rates doubled. The affordability crisis isn't just about prices. It's about the combination of inflated prices and high interest rates. And this combination is deliberate, because when you can't afford to buy, you rent. And when you rent, the institutional landlords collect the cash flow that used to build equity for families.